In 1945, while conflict dwindled in most theaters, the Pacific remained fiercely contested. Amid this chaos, Lieutenant Louis E. Curdes, already notable for downing German, Italian, and Japanese aircraft, suddenly encountered an unprecedented challenge. Piloting his P-51 Mustang Bad Angel, Curdes was patrolling the Philippine Sea when he spotted a C-47, an American transport plane, veering dangerously off course, aiming straight for an enemy-held airstrip. The aircraft below could have been a Japanese decoy, or more alarmingly, an American crew unwittingly on the brink of capture. Curdes radioed down a stark warning, quote, "For God's sake, keep away from shore. Japs there." He then initiated a series of maneuvers, firing warning shots in a desperate bid to divert the plane's course. Yet the C-47 advanced. Suspecting the worst, but acting with the determination of a seasoned fighter, Curdes closed to 20 yards, about to make a fateful decision. Few had achieved the distinction of downing aircraft from 3 nations. Curdes, however, was about to distinguish himself further, marking German, Italian, Japanese, and now, under extraordinary circumstances, an American plane. Born in 1919, just as the aviation industry began to burgeon, Louis Edward Curdes was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Under the watchful eyes of his aviation enthusiast father, who helped Art Smith get his craft airborne, and took his young son on trips to see the construction of the USS Akron and USS Macon airships, these early encounters ignited a deep passion in Louis, unlike any other. He dreamt of soaring through the skies, charting his own course through the clouds. While in college, Louis' attention was increasingly drawn to the escalating conflict in Europe, fueling a deepening disdain for figures like Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. By 1941, compelled by a sense of duty to counter the Axis threat, he left his studies behind and enlisted in the military, seeking to join the ranks of those who commanded the skies. Remarkably, his induction into military service happened the day before Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Following rigorous training, by December 1942, Curdes was commissioned as a lieutenant, earning his wings and a ticket to the heart of the conflict. By March of 1943, he found himself assigned to the 95th Fighter Squadron of the 82nd Fighter Group in North Africa, poised on the cusp of the Mediterranean theater's challenges. Ready and eager to fly, Lou felt as though every moment of his life had been leading to this point. Yet, the true magnitude of the impact he was about to make on the war effort remained beyond his imagination. As the conflict intensified, the Axis grip on Tunisia was beginning to be overcome by the Allies, partly due to strategic disruptions from British operations based out of Malta. These efforts began to turn the tide as early as the end of 1942. But the war was not yet over. Upon setting foot in North Africa, 22-year-old Louis Curdes was assigned the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. This aircraft, known for its agility and speed, clocking in at 413 miles per hour, outmatched many of its Axis adversaries in the sky. The day for Curdes to prove himself came on March 23rd. Soaring over Tunisia, despite understanding the gravity of his mission, the thrill of flight enthralled him. It wasn't long before he encountered Messerschmitt Bf-109s from Jagdgeschwader 27. Without hesitation, Curdes dove into the fray, astonishingly downing 3 and damaging a 4th near the Cap Bun Peninsula. But this maiden venture drained his fuel to a critical level and forced him to make an emergency landing in a dry riverbed. There, the new yet now battle-proven first lieutenant awaited the arrival of fuel and supplies necessary to makeshift a runway for takeoff. On May 19th, while providing cover for B-25 Mitchell bombers near Villacidro, Sardinia, Curdes' squadron clashed with 8 Bf-109s on their return. In the fierce exchange that followed, Curdes' unmatched skill downed 2 additional enemy planes, further cementing his reputation. This series of engagements elevated Louis Curdes to the status of an ace within just 3 months of combat, a rapid ascent that led him to christen his P-38 Lightning Good Devil, complete with a distinctive emblem showcasing Lucifer adorned with a halo. As the summer of '43 unfolded, Curdes cemented his reputation within the U.S. Army Air Forces as a feared adversary. He was on an escort mission over Sardinia when he came face to face with a new enemy, Italy's Regia Aeronautica. Curdes plunged into the fray in a heartbeat and downed a Machi C-202 Folgore, marking victories against 2 of the Axis powers. That summer, beyond engaging another German Bf-109 over Italy, he received his first Distinguished Flying Cross, a recognition few pilots achieved in such a short span. But all good things come to an end, and as the season shifted on August 27th, so did Curdes' fortunes. On an escort mission near Naples, a distress call over the radio signaled that Flight Officer Melvin Sheets was in peril. True to his character, Curdes broke protocol to assist, plunging into a fierce battle against German Bf-109s. In the intense dogfight that ensued, his P-38 Lightning Good Devil proved dominant, claiming 2 more Bf-109s, his final victories in Europe. However, the skirmish led to shrapnel injury to his shoulder, and a critical fuel shortage forced him to do a risky landing on a beach south of Salerno. It was only a matter of time before one of America's greatest pilots was captured. Lou was quickly taken in as a prisoner of war by Italian authorities, and according to him, was treated well by the guards, who even refused a German attempt to transfer him over to them. That same day, the brave pilot and 4 other Americans managed to steal a Red Cross boat and attempted an escape operation. Though recaptured and placed in a more secure prison near Rome, their spirit of defiance was undiminished. Only 4 days later, however, the Italians surrendered to the Allies. With this, an enraged Nazi Germany invaded its now former ally, taking over their many prison camps and occupying half the country, the half that Curdes was in. Before leaving, some of the Italian prison guards gave Curdes and the other Allied POWs rifles, blankets, and food. Back at the 82nd's headquarters, after their young yet battle-hardened pilot failed to make it back to base, the military listed Louis Curdes as missing in action. In a letter to the Curdes family, Captain Robert, the fighter group's intelligence officer, said, quote, "I've never seen him go out on a mission where he wasn't confident of returning, when he wasn't always the happy-go-lucky kid whose skilled hands drove the best fighter plane the Luftwaffe could throw against us. He was always the first to pitch into a fight, always the last to leave." Unbeknownst to everyone, Curdes would not give up without one hell of a fight. At the time, American pilots did not receive any survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. Louis Curdes was left to his own devices, with only a packet of local currency and a few maps, which he called useless, and a small .45 caliber pistol. Still, he and a group of about 20 officers were determined to make it back into Allied lines, and the team began their trek south through the central Apennine Mountains. But the trip in occupied land was fraught with danger, and one of the men in the group was killed soon after. For over 8 months, Curdes and his men slept during the day whenever they could, and traveled by night, aided by local civilians and members of the communist Italian resistance, who gave them handguns and essential supplies. As 1944 rolled around, back in Indiana, the Curdes family was about to give up hope on Lou when their son's best friend, First Lieutenant Bert Lutz, sent them a letter stating he'd heard through the military grapevine that he was indeed alive. Cautious but hopeful, the family waited. Finally, after nearly a year of endless walking, on May 27, 1944, Lou Curdes, thinner than he'd ever been in his adult life, heard the sounds of what he later learned was the Battle for Monte Cassino. Heading there, he spotted some British troops from the 8th Army after slipping through Allied lines. He later recalled, quote, "And here I am. I'm in civilian clothes with a fake Italian ID card. I think I surprised them as much as they surprised me. And I yelled out, I said, 'Have you got a cigarette?' And this lieutenant's eyes sort of lit up. He looked up and he said, 'Sure, come over here, Yank.'" Following a thorough questioning from the British, Curdes was given over to the Americans, who were able to confirm his identity. When he told them about his incredible story of survival, his superiors asked him to stay on and teach survival and escape methods to Allied air crews. After a couple of weeks, he was repatriated to the United States, and Louis Curdes was given a hero's welcome in Fort Wayne, where his family threw him an improvised parade. While Pilot Curdes was eager to return to active duty, the Geneva Conventions forbade a former prisoner of war to risk flying in the same theater twice, and thus, in August 1944, he was transferred to the Pacific. By that fall, some parts of the Philippines were once again under American control, and Curdes' unit, the 3rd Air Commando Group, was tasked with bombing Japanese bases, supporting ground troops, performing escort duties to Allied ships, and more. This time, Lou was put behind the cockpit of a North American Aviation P-51 Mustang, the powerhouse of the American forces. While quite different from his P-38, Curdes hoped his new model, aptly named Bad Angel, would work. Sure enough, on February 7th, 1945, only a month into his Philippines tour, while flying about 30 miles southwest of Taiwan, he spotted a lonesome Japanese Mitsubishi Ki-46-2 flying through Curdes' formation. Catching one of these reconnaissance was no easy feat. One of the best aircraft of the entire war, the type was capable of 400 miles per hour, and for a time, even Germany was interested in licensing the design. And so, the sneaky pilot called out that the aircraft was at 3 o'clock, when in reality it was at 9 o'clock, giving Curdes and his wingman the perfect opportunity to get the victory. By shooting down the Ki-46, pilot Lou Curdes became one of only 3 aces to have successfully shot down German, Italian, and Japanese planes during the war. He would still break yet another wildly strange record. On February 10th, Lieutenant Curdes was leading a squadron of 4 aircraft back to the Philippines from the southern tip of Taiwan when, flying over Bataan Island, the group split up, with Lou and Lieutenant Schmidtke banking north, while Lieutenant Scally and LaCroix headed south. Suddenly, Pilot Scally called for backup as they'd spotted a small Japanese airfield on the still occupied island. However, during the foursome's attack, LaCroix's aircraft was hit, and he had no choice but to bail out. Curdes was worried for a brief second until he saw LaCroix deploy the parachute pack that came with a dinghy, and knowing he was safe, the leader ordered the others to head back to base, and he began a final strafing run over the airbase. However, as he pulled up, he noticed a single C-47 Skytrain model approaching. Upon closer inspection, he saw that it had the markings from the 317th Troop Carrier Group. Initially, Curdes believed the Japanese likely stole the model, and he was furious. But after radioing the plane's pilot, he got no response. The situation only got stranger once Curdes flew right across the plane's flight path to try to get it to change course away from the landing strip, to no avail. The Skytrain and everyone aboard it was determined to land. But time was running out, and pilot Curdes had to make an important decision, whether it was an American aircraft that was lost or a Japanese-built similar model with American insignia. Knowing the model would be relentlessly attacked once it landed, no matter what it was, Curdes surmised it would be better to shoot them down than let them fall into Japanese hands. In a desperate measure to take it down before it landed, he shot across the nose of the ship, but the aircraft continued to move. Now, as a last resort, he closed into 20 yards, and with the aim only aces that had taken down models from 3 different countries could, he shot right through the Skytrain's right engine. And when the aircraft still didn't stop, he finally took out the other one, forcing the large aircraft to land in the water, very near where LaCroix was. After a dinghy blew up, Curdes saw that the people climbing on it were very likely Americans. Relieved, LaCroix paddled over to hear their story. As it turned out, the plane had gotten lost in bad weather, and with a malfunctioning radio and critically low on fuel, the pilot headed toward the closest airfield he could find, unaware it was an enemy base. While the group was initially angered about the actions of the P-51, when the situation was explained to them, the Bad Angel and the legendary ace flying it that saved them from a grim fate went from enemy to the greatest hero they'd ever witnessed. On a wild twist, the day after the incident, Lieutenant Curdes found out that one of the passengers he'd shot down was a nurse he had had a date with only the night before. When retelling his story for the August 1945 issue of Air Force magazine, Lou recalled his tally, quote, 7 109s and 1 Machi in North Africa, 1 Jap and 1 Yank in the Pacific. And to top it, I have to go out and shoot down the girlfriend. Following this, Curdes' P-51, which already had 7 Nazi swastikas, 1 Italian insignia, and a Japanese flag, was allowed to also add an American flag in memory of his latest exploit, with the promise not to repeat that one ever again. However, since the C-47 was not counted as an official victory, Louis Curdes' final score stands at 9, and he holds the distinction of being the only pilot with victories against pilots from 4 different countries.